We're just going to use this here. Put this on this side. Let me know if people of YouTube can hear me. And then we are live on Zoom as well as people keep coming in. Oh, we lost one. Well, we are going live here. We'll get everything set up as more and more people come in. But first thing that I want to go over, just because I think there's a lot of people that are quarterbacks that are watching that I think could really benefit from getting a little bit better understanding of the throwing sequence. And I'd say everybody that's on YouTube, I'm going to put the link into the Zoom, and I'm still trying to figure out if you guys could help me, maybe even possibly, that'd be great. But I'm still trying to figure out how to exactly get it used to work fine where I could go live from Zoom onto YouTube, just connecting those, right away. Right now, it seems to be having a little bit of issue doing that. Every time I try to, it says I need to set up some type of allow the permission, but I allowed the permission on the other end. So it's like, I don't understand what I'm doing. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and put this into the link here. And first thing we're going to go over is going to be the throwing sequence, and then we're going to also be talking about the hamstring strength and developing more hamstring strength, because I think that's a really important thing that we want to be able to do when it comes to developing top end speed. I'm going to be looking back and forth here, guys, just because I have one screen that's live in front of me here, and then you have the YouTube, so I want to be checking on the YouTube comments, and then also, if you guys have any questions or anything like that, you could always leave that in the chat within the Zoom, which, people are coming in and out of the Zoom, and we have more people, I think, that are on the actual YouTube Live. So, yeah, let's go ahead and hop on into it. So, big thing that ends up happening with the throwing sequence, and I think I'm just going to try to do this here. I'm just going to send this over. And what we need to be able to do is utilize the ground more effectively. Right, that ends up being the biggest issue, is that a lot of us just aren't using the ground when it comes to throwing the football. Right, we're just trying to utilize a little bit more of the lower body, and using too much of the arm and the upper body, and not really utilizing the lower body. So I'm going to go and do this multiple, and I'm going to share my screen. Again, it's frustrating that I don't know if you guys will be able to see this on YouTube, but when it comes to being able to utilize the lower body, a lot of it has to do with the push off and our ability to push off the back leg, right? And that's where the whole throw starts, is our ability to be able to push off the back leg and make that something that we're able to utilize time in and time out. I'm going to go and actually try to get this going as well on my iPad, so you guys can maybe check this out a little bit better that way. I'm going to go there. Got it. All right. You guys see that there? All right. So you can see all the arrows where I'm using the blue, the blue arrow, the red arrow, the green arrow, the yellow arrow, and then the orange arrow. So the first thing we want to do is be able to push off the back leg to be able to generate rotation in that where that blue arrow is, right? And so when it comes to the sequence, it starts with how well are we able to create rotation in that lower half, right? And then we go and transition up into the red arrow, and then to the green arrow, and then to the yellow, so and it all wants to be quick. So what I typically see, or what I've been seeing more lately, is because everyone wants to put such a big focus on hip and shoulder disassociation, right? The ability to really separate from the hips and the shoulders, which is right. That's something that we want, is we want to be able to, do a great job of being able to, separate our lower body through to our, through our core to our upper body. Okay. The thing is we want to be able to sequence that very, very well. So if we're pushing off the lower body and getting the rotation through, these three areas, we don't want to be lack in the ability to get our, upper body through and our arm through, right? It wants to be almost like boom, 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 boom is usually how I try to say it in terms of, the actual speed of getting your arm through. You don't want to be way behind with your arm, but you also don't want to end up being, you know, too far out in front with the arm either. You want to be able to, you know, so I commonly see, and what usually causes somebody to end up with the problem of, you know, their sequencing is that as they start, let me use this, as they start with, you know, getting their momentum to come forward, they open up that front arm right away, right? And that's like the most common thing that I see is that, you know, you immediately when, you know, starting to throw, just opening up that front shoulder. And when you do that, that makes it so you really don't create any disassociation at all, right? And that would also make it so you don't have, you know, the blue arrow first, then the red arrow, then the green arrow, right? It would just be, you know, that would essentially make it so it's just, you know, yellow arrow is moving at the same time as the blue arrow, okay? So the difference is that when we get that disassociation, we get those hips through, right, and we're able to keep that front shoulder closed. Okay, this isn't a amazing example here. Let me actually just do this, just because I recently got a good example of this. Here. Right, so here's a good example of being able to get those hips going through and keeping that front shoulder closed, right? So you can see what that looks like there in terms of, you know, the ability to actually generate rotation in the lower body. The issue here is that we didn't do a good enough job of being able to get the elbow to come through fast enough, right? So you start off with good hip and shoulder disassociation, but it wants to be one fluid, smooth movement. It doesn't want to be hips coming through and then, you know, or hips starting the movement, and then it takes a while for the arm to be able to come through, right? It wants to be hips coming through, and immediately when after the hips start to open up and come, you know, really start to throw, those the elbow and arm is coming through simultaneously. And that's the best way to be able to optimize this and really set it up to make it so we're in a position to really maximize performance overall. I want to see, can I screen record it all on this or no? Use my, nope. Yeah. Okay, so that ends up being, to me, the biggest thing that goes into, you know, our ability to create a correct throwing sequence. So you want to think about it if we go from the ground up, right? The first thing that happens is we push off the back leg to start the momentum of rotation. And so you get, you know, into the back of your, you know, 3-step drop, 5-step drop, you know, you just, even 1-step drop, maybe out of shotgun. So we're in that 1-step drop and we push off that back foot and we immediately get into rotation within that back leg, okay? And when we start with that, that really sets it up for initializing everything else to be coming through with the rest of the throw. So first we start off with the foot, and then we're gonna go into like the knee and, you know, that second part of the lower body, right? So first it starts with the foot being able to rotate, and then we go with the knee being able to rotate through there, and then, you know, it keeps on going up. So the next part's gonna be the hip. The next joint ends up being the hip that wants to come through. So we don't wanna be late in how we're rotating. We wanna start with that lower body being able to get that through, and then we want to get the knee to be able to come through, and then we want to get the hip to be able to come through. And those three happen very, very quickly, right? It's foot, it's knee, and it's hip, and it's like boom, 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 right? And then from there, there's a little bit of a delay with when we want to start to get like our lower spine to be able to start rotating, right? So I'm righty, so I'm doing everything from my right hand. You know, you guys might be seeing it backwards, but I'm starting everything from my right hand and transferring it to my left side. So we're starting with the foot, we're getting the rotation going on with the foot, and the key there is that we want to be pushing the back off the back leg to initialize rotation. We don't want to just rotate our front foot or our front hip. We want to be pushing off the back leg to initialize the rotation off of that back foot. And then we get the knee to really start bending and facing forward, right? Tom Brady does such an excellent job of being able to rotate to make it so the knee is facing straight ahead, basically, you know, immediately. And then we have the hip that starts to, you know, open up. And as we're doing this, we also want to be keeping that front arm closed, right? We want to be keeping it almost like our hand. Again, I'm using my left hand here. My left hand is on my right pec, okay? And when you are able to do that, that really allows you to be able to get those hips through and really allows you to keep those shoulders back, which creates that stretch on the core, right? And that ends up being such an important part here, and being able to throw with a lot of velocity is being able to create, or maximizing our levers, okay? So somebody like Tom Brady, at least in my opinion, I'm trying to find more and more research on this, but somebody like Tom Brady, the reason he's able to put so much on the ball and always has been able to put so much on the ball is because he has those long levers, right? He has a lot of space and distance between his left hip and his right shoulder, right? Just naturally he has that because he's 6'4". That's why a lot of these tall quarterbacks naturally have a lot of arm strength, is because they already have their levers set up. And so if they could just, efficiently utilize that, then that helps them in being able to generate a lot of force within the throw. If they are not able to utilize that very effectively, then that makes it so they're really not going to be able to utilize their, the lower body in the throw, the quarter in the throw, the upper body, all of that's going to be off a little bit if they end up, having that issue. And sorry if I'm going back and forth here with my eyes. I'm looking to see, if you guys have any comments, you can leave them in the chat on Zoom. You can leave them in the comment section on YouTube. I'm trying to go back and forth to make sure that everybody is, I'm able to answer every question or anything like that. But then we go into the upper body, and so as the lower body is going forward, and we're starting to, and we create that stretch within that core, and it's starting to unravel, right? Because it's all about that stretch shortening cycle, right? Being able to stretch through that core, and there's something called the oblique line that goes from your front hip, that left hip, to your right shoulder if you're a righty, right? And you really want to be stretching that out and really maximizing how much tension we're able to get there. And then from there, we really want to be able to just let that go. So similarly to the lower body, how, that left foot, the right foot pushes off, that right knee starts turning facing straight ahead, that right hip goes into internal rotation to really be able to twist everything around, creating that initial stretch. We also want to be very quick in how we drive our right shoulder and right elbow through the throw. So then once we're corked up and have that weight back, now immediately wants to fire through with that right elbow, with that right wrist, be able to get everything through the actual throw, and able to really, in order to really maximize our ability to create the right sequencing that we need to be able to get the ball out of our hands quickly, and to be able to really maximize the power that we have on each one of our throws. And I'm seeing a lot of issues with people that are not able to create the necessary disassociation within their hips and their shoulders, or even if they do, they're just not able to time it out right. How can I strengthen the quads at home without using a barbell? I currently have a bit of a back injury and can't do barbell strength work. The best quad exercise that I think that there is the power step up. All right, I'm sure you could just YouTube power step up and be able to find that. But if you need to, I could always send that over. But that's a great question. Best way to strengthen your quad without using a barbell is power step up. Now, to get into, the other big thing I wanted to talk about today is strengthening the hamstring. So I read this article today, and I will leave that in the description on the YouTube page. And if anybody wants it on Zoom, just let me know. I guess Jason, you're really the only person here on the Zoom, and I'm, if you guys have any questions here, Jason, let me know, because I know we need to be. It's funny that you are in here, because I was just going through the other day on my huddle, and I saw your guys' breakdown, and I was like, we need to get another breakdown in. We need to connect on Zoom and figure out what we're doing here in the next. I'm sure you guys have like another month before the season, and so I want to be able to connect and make sure that everything's all set up for a great year, because I know you guys have been working hard. I just don't know if we necessarily, what we need to work on from a mechanic perspective.
Yeah, I'll send you a new video here soon.
Awesome. Or we can connect on Zoom, and we can go over, some video that way. But I'll shoot you a message, and then we could set something up. I love the Zoom sessions, honestly, because it really gives the opportunity to be able to be like, okay, I get feedback, you guys ask questions, feedback, question, and be able to go kind of back and forth like that, which I think it would be, super beneficial.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. But yeah, so I read this article about hamstring strength. So it's, I got a thing that was talking about if we, trying to strengthen or when it comes to top speed, what's more important, the anterior chain or the posterior chain? I got a comment about that. And I said, more posterior chain. And there's another person that talked about how, it's the, reverse side. So the posterior chain is more important when you're like starting, and the anterior chain is more important when you're at top speed. And so I started doing some research into it. And, one of the things that they talked about that was interesting, because to me, when it comes to really any type of power, if you want to jump higher, if you want to be able to decelerate better, if you want to be able to run faster, have more top speed, you got to be able to really have a lot of strength with your hamstrings, and even when it comes to throwing the football, I think that your hamstring strength is like a critical part of anything that is necessary when it comes to power production, right? Because the hamstring is a unique muscle that is it's called a biarticulating muscle, which means that it crosses two joints. It crosses your hip joint and it crosses your knee joint. So it acts on really all three joints. It acts on the hip, it acts on the knee, and it acts on the ankle, the hamstrings too. And because of the placement that they're in, and the musculature that is in line with like the lower back, right? So all those erectors that you have within the lower back have, basically the same setup from a muscle perspective as the hamstrings, right? And so the lower back and the hamstring muscles are essentially the same group of muscles. And when you're activating the hamstrings, you're also activating the lower back at least 90% of the time. Even if you're doing a isolated single leg curl exercise or leg curls in general, you still end up activating the lower back, the recruit muscles from the lower back. And so, that whole muscle group is super important when it comes to generating top end speed. But the big question goes into what's the most effective way to, build it. And, there's really no other way of replicating hamstring strength activation. This is what they went over in the article. There's no way of replicating hamstring strength activation like sprinting. Sprinting is the best way to build up your hamstrings, period, bar none, in terms of how well you're able to actually recruit those muscles in your body is by actually sprinting. So I recommend, even in my program, I have sprinting for quarterbacks with the speed program. We obviously do a lot of sprinting, even through, combines. If we're trying to improve the 5-10-5, whatever, we're trying to improve our hamstring strength and doing sprinting. The second best exercise for the hamstring development is the Nordic hamstring curl, which is something that we talk about all the time. So number one, sprinting. Number two, Nordic hamstring curl. If I have a new, young, first-time QB, what would be the top three things I should rep with him? Real quick, I just want to answer that question just to be able to keep it all fairly quick here. So new quarterbacks, biggest thing that I would rep out is going to be the load. Right, being able to just get that, and you don't necessarily have to turn that pinky like that, just making it so they understand the load, making sure that they're able to get the wrist on top of the football. So I go here with guys, and from here I just finish the throw, right? That's how I make sure that they get into a C position. You can see how my wrist is, right? And then from here we're just there, boom, finish, right? So one's here and just repping how you load. The next one is here, being able to finish through. And then the last thing is I go and I have a video that I think has this on there, or probably a few videos that have this on there. So let's say you're normal, when you step into a throw, normally your feet are like this, right? I'll go and actually widen my feet out, and then I'll bend all the way onto my back leg. So for me, I'm bending into my right foot, and I'll keep my left shoulder closed, and then I'll push off my back leg and get my throw going. So I widen my feet more, so I have a longer distance to travel, okay? I really load into my back leg, and then I drive off my back foot to be able to really emphasize using the lower body in the throw, okay? So those would be, I would say, the three things that I would do if I was going to start working with like a new quarterback, is make sure that they're using the lower body excellently, making sure they know how to load the football, and make sure they know how to grip the football when it's coming out of their hands, okay? Because I always tell people, if you can't load, your finish isn't going to be good. And the two best things to be able to look at to see how well somebody's throwing is their load and their finish. You know, so if you can get the load right and you can get the finish right, then you're in a lot better spot. And then, you know, when you can go and work on, you can do the work on the in-between from there, you know, the throwing motion, the playing, everything like that. But if they don't know how to load correctly and they're not following through correctly, you know, coming right down and through, getting that hand to the opposite pocket, you know, getting in a good position there, then we're really not going to be able to really maximize the throw overall. And so now going back into the, you know, what we're talking about with the hamstring curls, the Nordic hamstring curls, what they did was they actually did the from a hip flex position, right? So more of a bent position, and also no hip flexion, right? So when you go do no hip flexion, generally you end up having to touch the ground with your hands, right? I try to do it a lot more with a little bit more hip flexion, and you know, I don't touch my hands to the ground, so that really builds up the lower back as well as the hamstring muscles when I'm doing those Nordic hamstring curls. But you could also do it where you're getting those hips all the way through, still trying to control it both on the way down as well as on the way up. And when you're doing that, you really want to make sure that you're able to activate. So you don't want to push off the ground too much. If you end up having to use your hands at all, you don't want to push off the ground too much. You want to be able to barely push off the ground and be able to get yourself all the way back up from the least amount of upper body activation as possible. You know, just making a nice little push up off the ground, come all the way back up, and then go through that. And I do those as often as I can. Right now, I ended up kind of banging my knee about a week and a half ago, actually 2 weeks ago to this day. It was 2 weeks ago on Wednesday. And so I'm really sensitive to, it's like a knee bruise. I'm really not in a bad position from a range of motion perspective, but it's just super sensitive. So I can't really do the Nordic hamstring curls because it just like hurts a ton, and just like this one particular spot that I was hitting. So yeah, some type of like knee bruise. But anyway, I haven't been able to do those as much. So I've been doing the monkey foot a lot. And they didn't do, by the way, in this research article, they didn't do single leg, like knee flexion, like leg curls. They did hip extension, but they didn't do knee flexion, which, I do think that would be up there as well. So, with Nordic hamstring curls, where the bend is happening is at the hip, right? You're going all the way down, and it's really controlling that hip extension. Excuse me. And there ends up being knee flexion coming up as well. But a lot of it ends up being with the hips and being able to drive those hips all the way back up. With the hamstring curls, I do it with the monkey foot. So that would be with weight. I did a video, if you look at my last video, of me with the USA track and field results and the workout. If you watch the first exercise that I do within the workout, so I even put in on there the timestamps. So if you just go to workout number 1 of the timestamp of the last video, you'll see what that monkey foot is that I'm talking about. And I use that. So essentially it's like a ski boot type of a thing, but you can attach a dumbbell to the boot. And then so now it's strapped onto your foot as if, a snowboard boot or ski boot. And then you could just do leg curls. You could do hip extension. It's really good for building up the hamstring. So I do single leg curls with that thing, and it kills me. I was doing Nordic hamstring curls for a while actually, and I started actually realizing that my left hamstring got a lot weaker than my right one. My right one is super strong and has plenty of range of motion. It's just like, it's a beast. My right side. My left side though has actually gotten weaker, and I can hardly even lift a 20. On my right, I can probably lift a 30, but my left, I can't even lift a 20. So I definitely have a lot to learn and to gain there on my left side to be able to, figure out how to gain more speed and work on that. And I'm posting a video here in the next day or so to talk about, some of the things I'm doing to be able to improve the speed. And I'm going to be doing a lot more workout videos for you guys to be able to go more in depth into not only, how to build speed from a quarterback or from a speed perspective or a sprinter's perspective or whatever, soccer, football, whatever, but also for quarterbacks. I'm going to start doing more workout videos for quarterbacks, not necessarily like crazy, let's get super pumped up, buff, you know, maximize biceps and all that type of good stuff. As much as I love doing that, and I know that's, you know, something that we want to do is get bigger, but, you know, more so from the side of what are some great range of motion exercises that can partner in with some of the limitations that we might have from a, you know, throwing perspective, right? Or from a arm perspective, right? So if we are not able to get great external rotation in the shoulder, great internal rotation in the shoulder, what are some good ways to be able to check both of those out, both from when we're throwing as well as, you know, when we're actually working out, and just give you guys some great exercises that you could be doing on a more consistent basis. You know, I sent out an email the other day that just talks about the routine that I think goes into being a great quarterback, you know, or being a great athlete in general. I think we all need to have a routine. I think we need to have something that we consistently do and we stick to that is able to address our specific part of a movement pattern. So if we need to improve our foot contact time when we're sprinting, we should have a bunch of exercises that we do in our warm-up that addresses foot contact time when we're sprinting. Or if we have, you know, a problem with our wrist flick or not enough external rotation when we're throwing the football, or whatever, we're not shifting our weight from our back leg to our front leg effectively, we should really be able to implement a wide variety of exercises that should be able to really master that, right? Let's see. How about gluten hamstring bridges? Yeah, I mean, so the gluten hamstring bridges, they didn't go a lot into the activation of that, but, you know, I think that one's in the general just kind of hip extension activation. I mean, you know, so the Nordic hamstring curls still worked. It wasn't like they didn't work, but, you know, and one of them was an isometric hamstring exercise, and that one worked as well too. I think that one was third in terms of activate, or I guess fourth. I don't know, because it was first was sprinting, then it was Nordic hamstring curls with no hip flexion, and then it was Nordic hamstring curls with hip flexion, and then it was like an isometric hamstring exercise was number 4 in terms of being able to activate that. But yeah, I mean, it can cause. I mean, anything can cause hamstring. You know, Nordic hamstring curls can cause them. Isometric hamstring curls, sprinting can cause hamstring injuries. So generally speaking, when you end up injuring your hamstring, it's because you are not adequately teaching your body how to lengthen the hamstring and contract the hamstring, right? Because that ends up being the relationship that you want to be able to get to when it comes to, you know, creating any type of power, really. But let's say it's just sprinting, because I know most of us are thinking about how we want to get faster. And it's about being able to develop that. It's the same thing with like the shoulder or the arm. You know, like if we're having arm soreness or shoulder soreness or pec soreness, not so much elbow soreness. I know we talked about that, and we'll address that in a second. But if we have pec soreness, it's because we don't know how to adequately extend or stretch in the shoulder and then shorten within the shoulder. Now, you know, that is going to be a mono-articulating joint or muscle. And so that is a muscle that only crosses one joint, right? The pec, it only crosses the shoulder joint. And so being able to stretch that and contract that is not going to cause as much potential harm as something like the hamstring that causes two, you know, because it's a lot more that goes into the activation there, because you could be extending the knee and also flexing the hip, and both of those end up putting stretch on the hamstring. You know, knee extension and hip flexion both stretch the hamstring, and knee flexion and hip extension both shorten the hamstring, just different parts of it, right? There, when it comes to the pec, you can only, you know, do horizontal adduction to shorten it and horizontal abduction to lengthen it. That's the only way you're going to shorten it and lengthen the pec, right? So it's a little bit different in terms of what the potential problems are. But you know, the isometric contractions of the hamstrings are interesting because, you know, like for me, when I go into like hip extension, knee flexion, you know, laying on my stomach, so basically getting my heel to my butt, and then if I have somebody like kind of pull my heel to extend my knee, right? So you're laying on your stomach, not laying on your butt. laying on your stomach and you have somebody pull there, that really activates that hamstring a ton. It's like a single leg isometric, activation there, because if you try to keep your heel close to your butt, that's like isometric activation. But they might even be able to kind of lengthen a little bit because you might not be strong enough to be able to resist it, and that creates like a lot of discomfort on my left side. My right side's fine. Left side, it creates a lot of discomfort there. So and that's just because that hamstring's not able to flex all the way, right? We see that same issue when sprinting. Okay, so that just means, again, that doesn't mean that my hamstring, if I have an injury out of that hamstring, that doesn't mean that it has something to do with that isometric training exercise. That just means that I'm not able to fully flex my left hamstring. So my left hamstring is way more at risk for an injury to me than my right one, because it's not able to fully flex and extend. And so that ends up being, the issue. Now, if I don't properly warm up, because I've had a right hamstring injury before, but it was because I was playing flag football and we played a game that was like in the winter, and we had like a playoff game, and then we had a rest, and then we had a championship game, a little bit later after that. And I didn't really warm up for the second game, so I ended up messing up my hamstring that way. So you're always at a potential to pull your hamstrings, to mess up your hamstrings if you don't have an adequate warm up. But if you have an adequate warm up and you're setting yourself up for success that way, and you hydrated properly, you had a good, so there's those types of factors as well. Put those into more of like the, factors that we can control, right? Well, I guess we can control all of it, but that's kind of a separate part of the potential issue here. There's a training, right? Are we overtraining, undertraining, in that part of the potential cause, or do we not adequately warm up, not adequately hydrate ourselves, drink alcohol, drink caffeine, drink something that dehydrates you. Those things cause a potential for an injury, just the same as, how we're training. And really the training, the best way to be able to train the hamstring is to be able to create an opportunity for it to be controlled through lengthening, and then be able for it to all the way activate or shorten, right? And being able to develop that relationship of the stretch shortening cycle properly is the best way to be able to train the hamstring to make it so it stays healthy. It's a great question, though. I really think that's great. I like it, Jason. Oh, zero position. I think I made a video about zero position. Oh man, I wish I could remember what that was. I need to look back. I'm gonna look back and get back to you on that with the zero position. And guys, ask questions. Like the reason I do this live is to be able to connect with you guys and make it so you guys can ask questions. Like obviously I want to come in with a topic. So then, if there's no questions, I'm not just sitting here like, hey guys, ask questions and hopefully we can get, I want to get the ball rolling, which is why today we talked about the throwing sequence. We can, check out more of the video at the beginning if you want to check that out. But we talked about the throwing sequence for quarterbacks, and we talked about, we're talking about like hamstring development specifically for speed. And, from there, we've kind of gone into different things and answered different questions here. I'm going to go in and answer this exercise or the question about disassociation, and then we got to get back to the elbow soreness as well. First is going to be the, what's a good exercise to create the hip and shoulder disassociation. And the big thing that I like to do, I'm going to stand up real quick. Let me adjust this. Oh, Tony's a little late. Oh no, I just knocked over everything behind me. See, that's why I use the green thing, is because of this. But here, so we're here in the, so I'm loading, let's say here, right? So I'm in that loading position, right? And I get my hip all the way through, okay? And then from that position, I go and I really try to pull back as much as I can. And that creates that disassociation. I feel the stretch here, and then I'll just come up over the top and I'll finish through. And that's one of the main ways that I'll go and actually work on creating that disassociation. So I'm here, right? I want to work on kind of loading here, and then I'll just stop and pull back a little bit more, push through a little bit more, just to create a little bit more activation through there. I'm just going to put this up because it'll just end up bothering me. Hopefully that's 8 minutes for a second. got all excited and popped up and knocked down all my things here. Man. So hopefully that answered your question there, Jason. And then, yeah, the zero position I got looked at back up. Now, when it comes to the elbows, sorry, I've got to laugh a little bit at the fact I just knocked all that stuff over. Not perfect, right? We're not perfect. But yeah, so with the shoulder or with the elbow soreness, typically what that means is that when you're coming through the throw, right, we're here, I'm releasing the ball, and I'm going like that, right? I'm not extending all the way when I let go of the ball. I'm going here, right? That will end up leading that elbow to be sore, typically, is not creating full extension of the arm as the ball's getting all the way through. Okay, so we want to be able to come up, through, extend that elbow as you're going through. And I'll add the answer to the last question here. What are the basic lifts that sprinters need to know how to do to build the explosive power and strength? I would say, you know, good mornings and deadlifts are going to be the two most important exercises to do when it comes to sprinting. I also like rear foot elevated split squats, right? So you have one foot up on the bench going through that single leg squat. I'm not a huge fan of squat, you know, heavy squatting. You could do, you know, some squatting every once in a while. I'm not a huge fan of it. More deadlifts, more good mornings. That's the name of the game when it comes to, you know, developing your lower body power. All right, but I do got to head out. If you guys want to message me, send me any type of information, you know, would be happy to answer any questions you might have. I'm going to put my email down here. Send me an email, send me a message. You know, we have Instagram. I'm sure you guys have been able to find that out. For, you know, Performance Labs is the Instagram. You know, everything down below. We're going to keep on doing these on a weekly basis. Sorry I missed last week. I got the vaccine. You know, I have some traveling I'm doing in the next couple of months, so I figured I'd get the vaccine. And I had to do it anyway for the USA Track and Field. And so I got it, and then it put me out, and I like couldn't even. I got it Tuesday, and it was like difficult to get water. I couldn't even get myself up to get water. So it was just really embarrassing that how much it affected me. The mom got it and was like, she was fine. She was like, oh yeah, it was great. And so that made me more motivated to get it. And then I ended up getting, you know, put out. But anyway, that's the live for today. If you guys have any questions, happy to hear from you. And I'll talk to you soon.